All right. Based on your quadrants, there are basic ideas here about what's positive, what's negative in whichever quadrant. The first quadrant, everything's positive. In every other quadrant, you have one positive and two negatives. Or I should say two positives and four negatives. But if I'm just talking about sine, cosine, and tangent. All right? So if you take a look in the second quadrant, sine and cosecant are positive, everything else is negative. In the third quadrant, tangent, cotangent are positive, everything else is negative. In the fourth quadrant, cosine and secant are positive, everything else is negative. And again, if you just remember sine, tangent, and cosine, if you remember those three, then you know you got your reciprocal functions figured out also. And going back to what we just did a second ago, notice sine and cosine were both negative, tangent positive, so is cotangent, and that verifies that there. The reason that's true is, imagine tangent and cotangent, opposite over adjacent or adjacent over opposite, we're going left and down, the signs are going to be the same, right? If I'm going in the second quadrant, opposite, positive, adjacent, negative, now that's negative. So that has to do with where you're at as far as signs are concerned. And when you're doing a problem like this, it's irrelevant. We did that without even knowing what was on this page. All right? But if we do a problem like this, let theta be in an angle in standard position such that sine of theta is positive, cosine theta is positive. State the quadrant which the terminal side of theta lies. That could be either. Angle in standard position such that sine of theta and cosine of theta are both positive. State the quadrant. Well, everything's positive in the first quadrant. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's the one they want, though. So let's just pretend they didn't want the first quadrant. So if I want both sine and cosine to be positive, we can see that that happens in the third quadrant. All right. Just knowing the tangent's going to be, oh, you know, that's not true.
No, because it was.
It has to be the first quadrant.
Yeah, because it was over.
Otherwise, yeah, because forget what I said. Yeah, everything's positive in the first quadrant. So in the second quadrant, sine's positive, cosine's negative. Third quadrant, they're both negative. Not sorry. Yeah, they're both negative. Fourth quadrant, cosine's positive, sine's negative. So they're both positive in the first quadrant. Here I'm like joking about it, but yeah. So, and again, that's just a matter of doing that. So if honestly, if they're both positive, the answer is going to be first quadrant. I mean, that's kind of boring, but if a more interesting one might have been, like, so let's say tangent of theta is negative, and let's say cosine of theta is positive. Suppose they did that. That'd be a more interesting problem. All right, so tangent's negative in the first, in the second and fourth quadrant, and cosine's positive in the first and fourth quadrants. Okay, so you establish what quadrants they're both. So tangent's negative in 2, cosine's positive in 2. The one that they share is the fourth quadrant. That's kind of how I'd like to see you work on these. All right, so, you know, and had I done this one appropriately, sine of theta is positive in the first and second quadrant. Cosine of theta is positive in the first and fourth quadrants. So that's kind of what I want to see. I want you to establish what quadrants they have the correct sign in, and whichever one they share is the correct answer. That's the way to do it.